Hello, welcome once again to Pale Blooms and Beyond. Thank you for joining us today. If you do like the programming you see here and the musicians and artists that I visit with, please be sure and hit the like button below and also subscribe to the channel. Peter Ulrich is an English percussionist, perhaps best known for his many years playing and touring with the band Dead Can Dance. Peter's influence can be heard on the first four albums, as well as playing live with the band from the period 1983 to 1995. Other 4AD bands that have benefited from Peter's drumming are the collective This Mortal Coil, where he contributed a composition to the second album, Filigree Shadow. He's also played on recordings by Wolfgang Press and Peter Nooten of Clan of Xymox. Ultimately, Mr. Ulrich would branch out to create his own music. His first single was released in 1990 on his own label, Cornerstone Records. Two full-length albums appeared in 1999 and 2005. Then came the Peter Ulrich Collaboration with a trio of albums as part of the Painted Caravan Trilogy from the period 2013 to 2019. And Peter's memoir, Drumming with Dead Can Dance in Parallel Adventures, was published in 2022. Well, welcome, Peter.
Hi.
We'll take
Here we are at last.
Here we are. All right. This is actually the second interview I've done with someone in their car. So I think another guy had a similar issue. So we'll take us back to the beginning. Were either one of your parents musically inclined?
Neither of them played anything, but they both loved music, but more really classical music and some sort of light opera, musicals, etc. So that was the kind of background I came up in. They were I was a child of I was born in the late 50s, so I was really a child of the 60s. My parents sort of just about knew who the Beatles and the Rolling Stones were, but it didn't go a lot further than that on the more modern scene.
Right.
Yeah, so there was always music around. They were great radio listeners. There was always music on, but it wasn't really the sort of music that I eventually veered towards.
Right. Can you recall one of the first singles or albums that you got, that you bought yourself?
Absolutely, yeah. The first single I ever bought was "I'm the Urban Spaceman" by the Bonzo Dog Doodah Band,
Right.
and the first album I ever bought was by The Move.
Oh, yes. Roy Wood and those
Yeah,
guys.
so I'm pretty happy with that.
Yeah. Well, I have to tell you, I've read your memoir, and I was into a whole lot of those same bands too growing up. So those
Mm.
influences were very similar. Well, what was the first musical instrument that you learned to play?
Yeah, so when I was around about 7 or so, my parents it was a tradition in the family that all children learned to play the piano. So I was sent off to piano lessons. Um, it wasn't an instrument I really took to. I never really learned to play anything very much, but it did give me a grounding in notation, scales, how music worked. And that was really, really useful. So I did a couple of grades on the piano, but it was obvious I was never going to be a concert pianist.
Right.
Um, so then it was when I was 10 years old. My grandparents on my mother's side, they used to go away on a big cruise each year and always come back with gifts for all the grandchildren. And on this particular occasion, I got a pair of bongo drums that they'd picked up in Acapulco,
Oh.
and that was it. Then I knew my destiny.
Oh, they were down here near my territory down here, but further south, a little further south. Wow, okay. Very interesting. Well, can you recall the one of the first live shows or concerts that you attended?
Ooh, uh, it would have been probably something like Hawkwind
Oh,
or the Who. There was a big concert in London with the Who and the Sensational Alex Harvey Band and the Outlaws. That was one of the early ones. Um, And then as a teenager, I started regularly going to a club or sort of Sunday night venue called the Roundhouse in London, in Camden Town, Chalk Farm, Camden Town, and I saw loads of bands there, all sort of the prog rock era. So it'd be bands like Curved Air, UFO, Steve Marriott, yeah, and that kind of stuff.
Oh yes, yeah. UFO Lights Out, what an album. I don't think there's a bad track on it.
Mm,
I've always liked the song Getting Ready. And
okay.
yeah, and then you mentioned in your memoir, Nectar, Tab in the Ocean.
Yeah, I only ever saw them once at the at one of the London theatres, but they were a band that I absolutely loved, and I had all their albums, and yeah, they made a big impression on me.
I love the song, the track Magic as a Child, from that same
Yeah,
album. Yes, yes. And then you also, some of the more folky rock bands like Straubs, Barclay, James Harvest.
yep,
I love all of that material.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah.
yes. Well, uh, talk about how you formed or you actually came to join the band Mischief.
Yeah, so I graduated from my initial pair of bongo drums to a drum kit as a teenager, and sort of taught myself to play in my bedroom. But never sort of seriously joined a band or got into do anything in particular with it. Went away to college, did my degree, went out and got a job. I moved with my partner of the time, who's now these days my wife, um, to a place in London called the Isle of Dogs, and there I saw an advert in a newsagent's window one day for a band looking for a drummer. So I phoned up, and that was it basically. I went along and joined in with them, and we all got along well together. And yeah, it took me a little while to get into it, because I'd never played with other people before. I'd only sat in my bedroom tapping away, but that was a great experience. And yeah, we just used to play around the pubs and clubs in East London, for beer money, basically. Playing a set of sort of soft rock, blues, Motown standards, that kind of thing. But it was a great grounding. It really sort of got me into stagecraft and playing properly and working with other people. So it was invaluable. If I hadn't have had that, then when I met Brendan and Lisa, shortly about a year and a half later, there's no way I would have been ready for that. So Mischief, the brief period with them was great and really set me up.
Yeah. Well, give a brief recap of the origins of Dead Can Dance back in Melbourne, Australia.
Yeah, so Brendan originally formed that. Was originally from London. He moved out to New Zealand. His parents emigrated to New Zealand when he was 15, so he was taken out to New Zealand. He then gravitated towards Australia and ended up as when he was 18 or so in first of all Sydney, and then moved on to Melbourne. And he'd been in sort of punk bands and that in New Zealand, and then again when he arrived in Australia. But he wasn't really satisfied with that scene. He wanted to do something a bit more creative, and was starting to hear the sort of stuff that Joy Division were doing, and getting very influenced by that. And he got together with he met a guy called Paul Erickson in Melbourne, and they formed Dead Can Dance together. Um, and then shortly after that, Brendan encountered Lisa busking in the street, and just hammering on her young chin and screaming basically, and thought, wow,
Yeah.
this woman's crazy, but there's something special here. And they kind of got together, and she came into the band. They got drummer in called Des, and that Dead Can Dance came about, and they played the sort of pub club circuit in Melbourne for a year or so, and made one or two sort of sketchy studio recordings, and then Brendan was very keen to come back to London because he felt that they wouldn't be able to get a recording deal in out in Australia. So he talked Lisa into coming over, but there was resistance from the other two. Eventually, Paul, the bassist, came over, but Des, the drummer, didn't. So
Yeah.
they just by chance happened to move into a block of apartments next to where I was living at the time,
Yeah.
and started looking around for a drummer.
Yeah.
Got put in touch with me, and there we are.
I was going to say it kind
Just
of worked.
right time, right place.
It worked out for you that the drummer didn't go with
It
them.
worked out amazing for me. Yeah.
Right. Well, so you were more or less absorbed into the band, not actually invited to join. Yeah.
Yeah. So it was a strange experience when I first met them and I went to audition with them. I just thought what they were playing was incredible. I'd never really heard anything like. I mean, I'd heard, I suppose, kind of slightly similar things, but nothing really like what they were doing. And it was extraordinary. It was mind blowing to me. I thought it was fantastic music, but I didn't really know what to do with it. It wasn't the sort of thing that needed the kind of standard drumming that I'd been doing in Mischief. It wasn't that kind of music at all. So luckily, Brendan's is is a hugely competent musician and can play just about anything he lays his hands on. So he was able to sit at the kit and sort of throw himself at it and very briefly hold down the kind of thing that he wanted me to play. So then I'd have to try and imitate that, and gradually we got through, and I sort of got molded into what he wanted from a drummer. And it was a fantastic learning curve for me. And I guess I was lucky again, because if they'd had a drummer come along who was straight into their kind of vibe, then I probably wouldn't have got a look in. But as I was the best they could find at short notice, and we just got on really well as friends as well, which I think was a big part of it.
Yeah.
And we're still good friends to this day. So
Yeah.
that was a really important part of it as well. And Brendan felt that, with the time that we had available, he could mold me into what he wanted me to do. So I worked hard at it, and we got there, and it was great, and it made me a hugely better musician than I had been before I met him.
Yeah. Well, it helped also that you and Brendan shared a love for football. Not
Yes, yeah,
just not
soccer as you call
exactly.
it, but
Yeah.
Football to us.
Just not the
Yeah,
same
yeah, it
team.
was. I mean, it's nothing to do with the music, obviously,
Right.
but yeah, it certainly
You
helped
had an
our friendship along.
you had an outlet there.
Yeah.
Well, Dead Can Dance songs, reading from your memoir again, were often written upside down. Explain that.
Yeah, so this was a really interesting thing that I discovered when I started working with Brendan, that he'd kind of figured out that most songwriters tended just to sit down with their guitar or go to their keyboard, and they'd look for the first chord structures or the first melody, and then write the song from there. But the the downside of that is that a lot of songwriters tend to just fall into a natural area where they're comfortable and where they always work. So you tend to get a lot of songs that sound similar or have the same kind of basis. So what Brendan had figured out was, if we started writing songs from the rhythm, from the drums first of all, and came up with a completely different rhythm drum pattern than anything that had gone before, and then superimpose the bass line on top of that, for something that worked at counterpoints with the drums and didn't just sit on top of it and just be comfortable with it, but actually interacted with the drum pattern and made sort of different dynamics happening in different directions. That would always be the good basis to work from. So we spent hours and hours with just me playing drums, Paul playing bass, and Brendan directing us and saying, try this, try that. And we came up with a set of very varied bass and drum patterns. And then he would start to work on the guitar parts. Lisa would come in with on the songs that she was going to sing and with the Yang Chin parts, whatever. And so it was a completely different way of working to anything I'd ever known before. And I think it's the basis of how there's so much variety in the songs of Dead Can Dance.
Yes, yes, I have to echo that exactly. No song sounds the same. No two songs sound the same.
Mm.
Exactly, much variety. Well, in '83, the band recorded a demo of a few tracks and sent out to several indie labels. You eventually heard from Ivo Watts Russell of 4AD.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So you would end up, well, the band, a long, relationship with 4AD.
Yep.
The first live gig in support of fellow 4AD band Xymox Deutschland. And then Ivo decided to finance an album. Do you have any memories recording the album at Blackwing?
Yeah, very much so. So Ivo, when he first received the demo tape, he got in touch with us and said that he really liked it, but he was fully extended financially with the projects that he had underway, and he couldn't do anything for us at the moment. So we said, "Oh, okay, let us know if anything changes," kind of thing. And then he went quiet for not all that long, maybe a month or 6 weeks or whatever. And then he got in touch again and said, "Look," and he'd obviously it been sitting in his mind, and he said, I'd like to see you play live. I've got one of my bands doing some gigs, a couple of gigs in London. Can I put you on as a support band?" So we said, "Yeah, great, we'll do that." So we did these 2 shows in London supporting Xymox Deutschland, and Ivo came along, and it was clear that he was really, really knocked out by what we were doing. Lisa's vocals and he'd loved Lisa's voice from the recording, and that was the thing that really got him hooked on us in the first place. But then once he saw us live and saw what Brendan could do with singing and playing these complex guitar parts at the same time, he was completely bowled over by that. So he was then very keen to work with us, but he said, "Look, I can put you into the studio, but you'll have to do I can give you 2 weeks basically in the studio, and you go in and give me an album." So we said, "Yep, okay." And yeah, it was a difficult process because he put us into this studio, Blackwing, which 4AD were tended to use all the time at the time, where Cocteau Twins were recording and some of his other bands. But it was really a studio that was designed for synth bands and electronic music, and not this kind of more acoustic stuff that we were doing. So we really struggled with the sound qualities in there, and Brendan in particular had a really tough time trying to get the sounds that he wanted. So we ended up with demos that we weren't really overly happy with. So Ivo gave us another. That was in I think the June or July of 1983. In the early September, he gave us another week in Blackwing for to reapproach having taken a break from it, to go back and remix the tracks, which did improve things, but still Brendan was not really happy with it. But we got it as good as we could. Then I went with Brendan to the mastering studio, and we managed to get it a little bit brighter again in the final mastering. But ultimately, yeah, it wasn't really ideal. It wasn't what he'd hoped would come out of that first recording session, but it was there. We had the songs, and it was done, and Ivo was happy with it, so it was agreed that it would be released early the following year. In the
Yeah.
meantime, we went and did a session for the John Peel show, which is probably your viewers, listeners, would some of them will know of it. It's a British radio show that was very heavily listened to for the kind of indie scene in the 70s, 80s, 90s. And we there we did. I think we did a couple of the songs, and we had a much more live feel to them. We were using the BBC studios in Maida Vale, and they had a much better sound quality for what we were doing. So those versions, have a bit more life to them. So we have those as well. But overall, I think there's a lot of people who absolutely love that first album. I still love it. There's some great songs on there. Some of a couple of mine that were favorite songs to play live. Wild in the Woods is one that would particularly springs to mind that I always loved playing live. So yeah, it was not the ideal experience, but it was still great, and we had our first album.
Right, right. Well, Paul would leave the band and go back to Australia. In October, the band signed a contract with 4AD. You toured Holland supporting Cocteau Twins. Now that's a concert I would have loved to have seen right there. Yeah, both of you guys early on.
It was just, it was just like heaven for me to be playing in this band and then watching the Cocteau Twins every night after we'd performed. I couldn't believe my luck. I just thought, this is it. So
right.
amazing experience.
Right. Got a new bassist, Scott Roger.
So the Paul, the original bassist from Australia, he came over to London. He was based in London for about a year. But in the end, he just got very, very homesick for Australia. He really didn't take to London. And, Melbourne's by the sea. It's very bright. And, he had all his family and friends there. In London, he was stuck with no money through a very sort of grey, harsh winter. And, it just, he wasn't really comfortable in London. So
he got homesick.
He's a lovely guy, Paul. I'm still in touch with him every once in a while these days. And he decided to bail out. So we had to very rapidly find a new bassist for the tour we were doing with the Cocteau Twins. And Robin Guthrie, the Cocteau's guitarist, knew this lad Scott from their homeland in Scotland, and put him forward. And Scott joined and was with us for a few years.
Yeah. Well, you were nominated to be the tour manager.
How
did that?
That kind of wasn't planned at all. That was but Brendan and I just sort of discussed it, and we thought, well, we don't really, we still had no money, basically. We weren't, it was a long time before any money started rolling in. And we thought, we don't really want to, have to pay a tour manager to do something if we can do it ourselves. And we didn't see what was so complex about it. So when 4AD said, "Who's your tour manager?" Brendan said, "He is," and put me forward. So that was it. I became the tour manager as well. But it was. I dealt with a lot of the contractual stuff. I'd had some experience doing business admin as well before I met them, so I took to that fairly readily. And used to hand out the daily allowance to the other band members on when we were on tour. So I held the purse. And it worked out.
Well, briefly, explain what the cornet was.
Oh, right. So that was one thing that we had no idea we were going to have to do, was this thing called a carnet, which when you travel abroad as a band, when you come out of the UK, we had to do this customs document thing, which you have to list everything you're taking. You can't just say a drum kit or a guitar. You've got to, you've got to give you've got to list every single drum and cymbal and stand, and give code numbers and where the country of origin it was, and value and everything. And it's a real pain in the backside. So that was something that we had to organize that we didn't have any previous knowledge of. But then once you go out on tour, you have to, every time you go through a customs point between one country and another, you have to go to both the country you're going out of and the country you're going into and get this thing stamped by their various customs people. And yeah, it's just a real palaver, but it's something that we had to do. And yeah, I mean, in the book, you probably, there's a couple of quite funny stories about things that we encountered going through the customs points doing these things. But I say you have to, people should read the book to get things.
Yes. Viewers do read the book. It's very enjoyable. Yeah. Well, there was a scary moment playing live that was a literal shock to Brendan on stage. Yeah. Oh.
Yeah, I mean, it's a good example of how how sort of wet behind the ears we were when we first went out on tour. Was that we got to the venue for the first show in Holland, in Amsterdam, and nobody had thought that in in Europe they have different plugs to the electric plugs we have in the UK. So we turned up with all our equipment with all the English plugs on them, and of course we couldn't plug in anywhere.
Yeah.
So somebody had to be sent rushing out to the local hardware store to get a load of Dutch plugs. And then we had to really quickly change them all over on all the amps and everything. And we just about got our sound check done, and then we had to go on stage. And we were into about the third number in our set, and suddenly there was this huge flash, and Brendan was lifted about a couple of feet off the floor of the stage, and this great blue flash. I think the audience saw there was some kind of wacky pyrotechnics going on, so they were all like clapping and cheering. But he was suddenly, shaking, and we were all kind of, what's going on? Lisa rushed towards him, and luckily the the guy from the road crew who was doing the on-stage sound realized that Brendan's guitar had gone live and he had full electric current going through him. He ran on stage, screamed at Lisa to get away, and then he did this amazing kung fu kick and kind of kicked Brendan's guitar up in the air, just sufficiently to let Brendan throw it off and break the circuit. And then, Brendan collapsed on the stage, and he was, we had to stop the show, and he was okay, but he was really badly shaken. So it wasn't the greatest start to our our touring career, but he recovered, and he's not a guy to be put off easily. So he was back on stage the next night, and we sorted it. We found that when the plug to his amp had been wired the wrong way round in the rush to get everything done. And so it got sorted out, and we carried on. But that was a pretty hairy moment.
Yes, that would be. Well, moving forward, James Pinker officially joined the band, and Vaughn Oliver, 23 Envelope, designed the album cover. And I just wanted to mention a few tracks, my favorites from there. The Fatal Impact is one that I really enjoy. A Passage in Time, really like the guitar in that one. Brent's guitar, and then Musica Eternal. Those are my three picks. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Fatal Impact was one of the songs that Brendan and Lisa brought from Australia with them. They'd recorded it out there, and it's a song that they recorded using drum machines and such. So so that's actually not one of the. We didn't record that at Blackwing. It's one of they'd actually done the recording out in Australia and managed to get hold of the original recording. So Yeah, it wasn't a song that we ever had in our live set. But it's a lovely, yeah, it's a beautiful track. Yeah, lovely.
Yes, yeah. Well, the album itself got some good reviews. Um,
Yeah, it
and
did. Yeah, yeah.
yeah, and you guys played on the same bill as Fad Gadget. How was Frank Tovey?
That was quite funny actually. Yeah, because he was a nice guy. But he had I mean, you probably know his persona on stage, and he was out there being, pretty wild and stage diving into the crowd and stuff. But then when we saw him backstage, he was just in slippers and normal sneakers or whatever, and pushing his baby around in a little pushchair and chatting away with his partner. So it was like a picture of domestic bliss.
Yeah,
So it was
yeah.
quite funny to see the two sides of his personality. But yeah, it was fun. A good show. He put on it was a good show he put on. So
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. I think some musicians like that may know that their life is not going to be real long, but because they have some, physical problems or what have you. They burn out,
Mm.
pretty quickly, but they kind of go all out as well,
Yeah,
because they're gonna milk it for what it's worth, so they know that
yeah.
maybe they won't live to be real old, so yeah, unfortunately he was one of those. Well, as I told you previously when we talked, two of my all-time favorite Dead Can Dance songs are The Arcane and In Power We Entrust the Love Advocated, both from the EP, the '84 EP, Garden of the
Yeah,
Arcane Delights. And Brendan drew the cover. I didn't realize that. Yeah.
he did.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. That's that.
Yes, yeah, as you say, a lot of the covers were 4AD covers were done by Vaughan Oliver, 23 envelope, and but for that particular one, the EP, Brendan had a very specific idea in mind of this the image that he wanted for it, and uh, that image wasn't something that we could find. So he sat down with a pen and paper and drew what he had in, what he visualized to go with this with the concept for the EP. So, and yeah, it's a lovely illustration.
It is. It must have taken him forever to do that. Very detailed.
It took him quite a while, yeah.
Right,
Yeah,
right.
yeah, he was laboring over that for a good few weeks.
I
Yeah,
can imagine. We'll
yeah.
talk briefly about the chaotic French tour.
Yeah, so that was sort of our second major European tour. Was I mean, when I say major, it was only about 8 dates, but it was actually us going out to do to tour around the country. Um, and at that time we were still going off, the whole lot of us squeezed into Brendan's dad's camper van. So we we set off, and we got halfway to the first gig in France, and the engine blew up on the van.
Oh,
So it wasn't the greatest start. So we missed the first gig in Lyon, I think it was. Um, and then the guy who'd set up the tour for us, who's based in Paris, he came out and organised new transport for us, and rescheduled, and we got underway. But yeah, it was quite a chaotic tour in many ways. It was completely exhausting, and even though it was relatively short, um, and it sort of culminated in this crazy show in Marseille, where we were playing and found ourselves playing in some kind of disco nightclub, which was very bizarre. Um, and the band, the Lords of the New Church, turned up, and obviously knew the proprietor of the venue, and he wanted them to play as well as us, to as a like a special thing. And the Lords of the New Church were very big in France at the time. They were, you know, they were much bigger than us. But we, they could only play if they used they didn't have all their gear with them. It was an impromptu thing, so they would only play if they could use our instruments. And we we had no objection to them playing, but we said, you know, they're not using our instruments because we know, you know, we knew they had a reputation for smashing stuff up on stage, and we just couldn't afford that. You know, we still had no no two pennies to rub together, so we couldn't afford to have our gear smashed up. So anyway, the full story of it is told in the book, but we ended up there was a big brawl in this nightclub. It was absolutely crazy, and
Yeah.
it was like something out of the Wild West with chairs being thrown through the room and whatever. And but anyway, we ended up coming out. A couple of our guys had to go to hospital to be checked out afterwards, but we eventually came out relatively unscathed and
Yes.
and limped home. But yeah, it was a bit of a crazy tour.
Yes.
But
Yes.
it's sort of about in the you know, it set us on the road, and we became very big in France. We had a great audience. I've always had a great audience in France, and very good album sales there. So yeah, it did
Yeah.
its job.
It's did its job. Yeah. Speaking of Lords of the New Church, Steve Bader's another one that kind of burned really bright for a while.
Mm.
I talked to a guy who was in his band, Steve Bader's band, and he had
Yeah.
some stories to relate about Steve. And then sad to hear about Brian James, the guitarist, passing recently, not too long ago.
Yeah.
It was in The Damned as well. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's well. For AD Collective, This Mortal Coil's first release, It'll End in Tears, included a couple of tracks by Lisa and Brendan, Waves Become Wings and Dreams Made Flesh. I particularly like Waves Become Wings, that one, off of that. But other tracks off of that first one, Song to the Siren, of course, Fond Affections. You familiar with, remember that one, Fond Affections? And then the cover of the Roy Harper song, Another Day is really nice off of that. Well, talk about the upgrade in equipment, including the CX5 music computer that aided in recording Spleen and an Ideal.
Yeah. So one of the things that is often mentioned by people who are familiar with Dead Can Dance in the early days is this sudden huge change between the type of music that we were putting out on the first album and on the Garden of the Arcane Delights EP to the album Spleen and Ideal, which is the second album. And the fact was, Brendan had always, from when I first knew him, he always found the sort of guitar-based drum structure very limiting, and had been very keen to branch out into other sounds. And alongside other influences, he was very strongly influenced by film soundtrack music, anything from the sort of John Barry type arrangements to Nino Rota, the sort of stuff that Popol Vuh were doing with Werner Herzog's films. Brendan loved that kind of orchestration and and really, you know, craved being able to expand into that kind of field. And when we eventually got our first publishing deal sorted out, we finally got a lump sum advance of a few £1,000s. And so the first thing that he got was one of the sort of most basic music computers that were around at the time. But it actually gave him the possibility to start writing parts for brass and strings, which were those early sampled sounds, or in fact they weren't even samples. They were just electronically created sounds. They were pretty poor, but with this basic Yamaha computer, he could write those parts and also print them out. So we could then bring in classical musicians who played the strings and brass and woodwind instruments that he wanted, and give them an actual score to work with. So the Spleen and Ideal album, the 4AD by that stage were able to give more time to work in the studio and put us into a studio with John Rivers up in the Midlands, which was much more conducive to the achieving the kind of acoustics that we wanted for the recordings. And then Brendan was able to bring in these classical musicians as well to play the parts. So suddenly Dead Can Dance was orchestral and not a indie guitar band anymore. And I think Brendan went to such the other end of the extreme that, if I remember rightly, there's no guitar on that album at all.
Right. I don't hear
Might
it.
be somebody might catch me out on that, but I think I'm right in saying that.
Yeah.
So one of the interesting songs on that was one that we'd done for we'd previously recorded. We'd written it for guitar, bass, drums, and we recorded it for one of the second John Peel session we did under the name Penumbra, I think. And then it became a track on the Spleen and Ideal album, but it was a completely different arrangement. So Brendan played the lead part, which was a guitar part in the original, with a zither, and then made it a much it had a totally different arrangement to it on the album. So when we played it live, we still used the guitar, bass, drums setup because it was we had that sorted out for live work, but it made for a really interesting juxtaposition to have the album version that was done in a totally different way, but stick to the live version as we'd originally written it in the rehearsal studio.
Yes.
So it was an interesting time. There was all sorts going on, but it enabled Brendan to branch out greatly in the way he was composing the music, and it gave Lisa has always been a massive lover of opera and classical music as well. So it gave her the chance to use her voice in a much different way and extend what she was doing. So it was great for both of them.
Yeah, I think it was a huge leap from the EP to this album in sound.
It's a massive difference. I mean, it's really, but it's interesting. It's still got that Dead Can Dance essence about it.
Right.
It's still very much Dead Can Dance, but instrumentally, it's totally different.
Right. And that was one of the first albums to be released on CD, which at that time was the new format.
Yeah, it was. Yeah.
Right. Tell the story. Interesting, humorous. Tony, how do you pronounce his last name? Where
Tony Waria, the didgeridoo player from New Zealand.
When you're at the hotel.
The one in the hotel in Holland.
Yeah.
So Tony was a friend of James Pinker, who you mentioned before, who was working with us by this stage, and he, as I said, he's a Maori but didgeridoo player. So didgeridoo is really an Australian Aboriginal instrument, but he'd taken it up and learned the proper circular breathing method that the Aboriginals use, and so he was a proper exponent of playing the didgeridoo, and he came on tour with us to do the part of the support act, which was a very interesting way to get people in the mood. And he's a lovely guy that got on well with us all. And so one night we were in on tour in the Netherlands, and we had a night where we didn't have a show. So I went out with a couple of the others and with Tony, and we went out and had a few drinks, and then got back to the hotel in the early hours of the morning. And feeling a little bit mischievous, Tony decided that he'd treat the fellow residents of the hotel to a bit of entertainment. So he put his didgeridoo into the plug hole of the bath in our room, and started cranking up there, and the sound went down the plug hole and into the pipework of the hotel. And as Tony kept playing, this sound just gradually built up, going around the pipework in the hotel, and in the end, the whole hotel was going woo, woo. And then all the fire alarms went off, and people were running up and down the corridors. They thought there was some earthquake or something going on, and it was absolute chaos. And I was in absolute hysterics. I was rolling around on the floor. I couldn't do anything. I was just completely taken up. But Tony just kept going. He just, it seemed like for ages. It was probably only for about 10 or 15 minutes or whatever, but it seemed like it went on for hours, and the hotel was in absolute pandemonium. And then he just stopped, and we put it away and went to bed. And no, I don't know. They never found out what
They
it
never
was.
found
It
out
was a
what it
complete
was.
mystery to everyone what had happened. But yeah, I always thought it was it was a better, that was a a Dead Can Dance hotel story. It was better than throwing TVs out the window and doing
Yeah,
putting dynamite down the loo and all the things that rock stars normally do.
that you heard so many times. Well, I want to mention my favorites off of Spleen and Ideal. De Profundis, a great way to start the album. Very haunting. And then Mesmerism is another one that I really like. Enigma of the Absolute. And my favorite off of the album is Indoctrination, A Design for Living. That's my favorite. Not just the music, but the lyrics in that one, which were appropriate when it came out, and they're very appropriate today. Freedom exists within unconditioned minds. I mean, think about that, for a while.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Brendan.
Yeah.
Obviously, as I'm sure you're aware, Lisa never tended to write lyrics. She always used her voice as sounds, because she didn't want to be tied down by the meaning of lyrics. She wanted to create an impression of what a song was about just through sound. Brendan was completely different. He was an avid reader, reading a lot of philosophical stuff. And yeah, a lot of the lyrics that he wrote, he came from sources in the philosophies and such that he was reading at the time. So his lyrics tend to be, very interesting and steeped in, the human condition and, as I say, the ideas and the philosophies that he was looking at. So yeah, there's a lot of
Yeah.
interesting stuff in there.
Right. Just one more little quote. The insatiable thirst for power has made idols out of mortals and gods into clay. I mean, think about the times we're going through today, right now, and
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
how right on that is. Wow. Well, going around the same time, the second This Mortal Coil release came out, Filigree Shadow, and you contributed a track to that at first, and then off of the
Yeah,
Filigree.
so the kind of one of the strange things was that This Mortal Coil was always intended by Ivo to be a project where he would pick songs that he would then invite musicians either from 4AD label or from a wider network of bands that he loved, to come in and do cover versions of them in their own style. So virtually all tracks on This Mortal Coil are done in that way.
Yeah.
But when Ivo approached Brendan and Lisa originally, they said, no, we don't want to do that. We want to write our own songs. So he made an exception for Brendan and Lisa to do the two songs you've already mentioned on the first This Mortal Coil album. And then when it came to Filigree Shadow, I'd written this multi-part drum piece that I'd recorded with Rob Lee, another guy who was working with Dead Can Dance at the time. And I just sent it to when we just made a 2-track mixed down onto a cassette tape and sent it to Ivo to say, what do you think of this? Not with anything in particular in mind. And he came back to me and said, yeah, I really like it. Could I use it on the next This Mortal Coil album? So it wasn't something that was written for This Mortal Coil. I never even, it never occurred to me that it would be right for that. But yes, it was his suggestion, or it was his invitation to use it for that. And so I said, yes, of course, that would be great. So so it got included on the Filigree Shadow album. And then Brendan liked it and said to me, what do you think about doing an extended version? Because it was quite a short piece. It's less than 2 minutes long. What do you think about we arrange an extended version of it to play live? So I said, of course, that would be amazing. So for I think 2 or 3 tours around that time, we used to finish the set with everybody. I mean, at that time we were touring with maybe 8 to 10 people on stage, and we had everybody playing percussion, and we used to do this massive percussion ensemble piece that was based on Our First and Then and Brendan's reworking of it. And it used to, people loved it. It used to go down a storm. It was we used to allow the lighting guy to go crazy on the lights, and it
Right.
was a good storming end to the set.
Yeah, yeah. One other track off of that Filigree Shadow I wanted to mention, uh, a second Tim Buckley cover, I Must Have Been
Mm.
Blind, which Brendan would cover on his future solo album, Eye of the Hunter.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and beautifully so. It's a lovely song. I do. Tim Buckley is an absolute hero of Ivo's. Ivo
Oh, yeah.
just totally loves Tim Buckley's stuff. So, of course, Song to the Siren on the first album, and then Must Have Been Blind. They're very much personal, heartfelt loves to Ivo, and the versions that were done for This Mortal Coil and then Brendan's later version are all, I think really beautiful interpretations of the songs.
Yes, yes, I agree. I agree. Well, in '87, you played on Wolfgang Press's Big Sex EP on the track The Wedding.
Mm.
Yeah. How was that?
Yeah, so that it was a crazy thing when we did the when we first signed to 4AD and Dead Can Dance, we did our first headlining gig as in London. Ivo came up to me while we were after we'd done the sound check and we were just milling around and waiting for the show to start, and asked me what the name Mark Cox meant to me. And I said, well, I know of 2 people called Mark Cox. One was an English tennis player and the other one was a guy I used to go to school with some years ago. And he said, well, the one you used to go to school with is in another one of my bands and he's here tonight. So it turned out to be Mark from the Wolfgang Press, who I hadn't seen since
You weren't aware of that.
since we left school.
Wow.
And so we kind of rekindled an old friendship, and we're both astonished to find ourselves playing in bands on the same record label. So then when on a couple of occasions when Wolfgang Press were in the studio and they wanted somebody to just add in a little bit of extra percussion, then I got the I got the call. But I think the one you were talking about, was that the one where I talk about the session where we had to keep putting the bongos in the fridge?
Yeah.
Was that the one? I can't
Yeah.
remember if it was that one or the. But
Yeah.
anyway, there was a
Yeah.
session that I did with the Wolfgang Press. This was back in Blackwing Studios again, where we'd recorded our first album, and this pair of bongos, which was the ones that I had when I was 10 years old, my very first pair of drums.
Right.
They have no natural tuning on them. They are as they are. So they're very susceptible to changes in temperature and humidity and whatever. And when I got into Blackwing to do this bit of recording with them, the skins had gone completely slack on them because it was a warm day and it was very humid in there, and they'd just gone. So I had no sound. So I had to. The only thing I could think to do was to go and put them in the fridge in the kitchen in the studio. So we put them in the fridge and waited for sort of 20 minutes or so and took them out, and they'd tightened up nicely. But because it was so because of the conditions in the studio, they were we were losing the tension on the skins while I was
Oh,
actually playing in the takes, and you could
oh,
hear
wow.
the tone of the drum going down gradually during the course of the take. And then at the end of that take, I'd have to rush them back into the fridge again
Get him
for
back in there.
10 minutes and then come back and do another take. And
Uh,
anyway, we got it done.
you got it done. That's
Yeah.
a funny one. Well, you would also play on the track "Swing Like a Baby" from Birdwood Cage from the '88 Wolfgang Press album. So you also played on that. Well,
Yeah,
1980.
they were only just
Okay.
little incidental percussion parts, but it was good fun to. It's always lovely to get invited in and be involved in a session.
Oh yes, oh yes, I can imagine. Well, from 1987, Within the Realm of a Dying Sun. This may be my favorite Dead Can Dance album.
Okay.
Yeah, of all of them. Contains two of my favorite tracks. Xavier. Oh, that's just, I mean, that may be my very favorite track, Dead Can Dance. And then Anywhere Out of the World. Those two tracks.
Right.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Um, and then it also contains Windfall, another one that I like, and Summoning of the Muse. So those are my picks off of that album. Yeah, Xavier is just a classic. I mean, I love that long intro, before you
Mm.
get into his, his voice, his singing. But yeah, it's a great, wonderful track.
Yeah, I can only say, I mean, that's Brendan yeah, at his finest with his arrangements and the way he hears things, and has those beautiful little melody lines going and weaving in and out of things. It's classic Brendan. Yeah,
Yes.
absolutely.
Yeah. Well, touring the album was the largest backing band to date. I mean, you had a full band, back there. How many
We
members? How many would you?
uh, Good question. I know we certainly had two cellists, two trombonists, a trumpet, the drums, keyboards, bass, Brendan playing a few different things, Lisa with her Yangchin and accordion, extra, yeah, additional percussion. Yeah, so it was there must have been 10 or 11 of us on stage. Yeah,
Wow.
it was that was always going to be unsustainable. I mean, it was it was also because we were mixing, we were using acoustic instruments, orchestral instruments, and computer generated sounds from keyboards. At a time when the technology was in its relatively early stages, we used to have tremendous, and obviously on instruments like the cellos, we were having to use pickup mics rather than being electric instruments that you could plug in. So we had all these very different sound sources, and the sound checking for it became an absolute nightmare. And we used to have all sorts of problems with the on stage sound while we were performing as well. So it was a really uh, it was difficult. I mean, it was a real challenge. But when it worked, it was. I mean, the shows were always good, even if there were little technical issues going on. They always carried over the feeling and the emotion that Brendan and Lisa wanted to get. But yeah, but when we managed to get over the little technical issues and everything really worked, then there was fantastic playing with that setup.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
sometimes it was difficult to settle on stage because you were aware too much of little things that were going wrong all the time that the audience wasn't really aware of, but we were aware of it on stage. So it was, yeah, pros and cons, but it was an amazing amazing thing to take out on the road.
Yes, yes.
But playing with that size of band was fairly brief.
Okay, okay. Yeah,
Too
one
expensive as well for
right,
hotel
right.
rooms and
Right.
transport and everything.
Well,
Yeah,
yeah,
crazy.
one artist I mentioned in the intro, but I forgot to mention when I was talking about Wolfgang Press. You played on Peter Nooten and Michael Brooks's 1987 "Sleeps with the Fishes." Played on
Mm.
there as well. Yeah, I like that album.
It's
That's
a
very
lovely album.
yeah,
Yeah, it's
yeah,
it was another great idea of Ivo's. He'd been doing some stuff with Michael Brook on. I'm not sure what the projects were, but it was something that brought them into connection together. And then Peter Nooten, the former keyboard player with Xymox, had also been talking to Ivo about solo ideas that he had, and Ivo just thought, yeah, I could bring these guys together and something interesting could come out of that. Um, and and it did. I think they I think there were some issues in them working together. It was they weren't a match made in heaven as such, which is why it was only a one-off album. But I
okay.
think they both appreciated that something really good came out of it.
Yeah,
And it is a lovely album. It is a lovely
yeah,
album.
yes. Yeah, you met, Peter. I love his work with Clan of Xymox. I wonder, did Brendan and Peter ever work together or consider working together?
No, we knew we'd actually originally introduced Xymox to Ivo. We met them on that first tour
Right,
of Holland
before
with the
they
Cocteau
signed.
Twins. We
Right.
just met them in a cafe before one of the gigs, and they came along and
Yeah,
introduced themselves to us and gave us their first self-financed EP.
yeah.
And we took it away and listened to it and thought, yeah, we really do, this is good. We like this. So we passed it
Yeah,
on to Ivo,
yeah,
and he liked it as well. And that was how they came to
yeah.
be signed to to 4AD. So we were friendly with Zymox. We were, they were they were good guys, and they came over and did a couple of shows supporting us in the UK in the very early days before they
Yeah.
before they recorded their first album with 4AD. So yeah, we had a good connection with them, but yeah, we never apart from me doing that one track with
Yeah.
Peter on his solo album, we didn't work together at all.
Yeah, I think it would be fascinating to hear, with Brendan and his instrumentation and
Yeah,
vocals to work with Peter because I love his instrumentation with
yeah,
Simon.
it's
Yeah,
hard to say because
that,
they
that would be
might be working too much in the same spaces that each other would want to they would each want to be in.
okay. Okay.
But yeah, who knows?
Who knows? Who knows? Right. Yeah,
Who
that would
knows?
be something. That would be something. A super group of two. Yeah. Well,
Hmm.
you this was the last album that you would work on until Spirit Chaser, right? Within the realm of a dying sun. You moved more
Yeah, so
into
I didn't appear on the Spleen and Ideal album, and I
okay.
wasn't. I did a couple of little bits on the Within the Realm album. Then
Yeah.
I wasn't. I didn't do anything on the Ion album or Serpent's Egg album,
Okay.
but I did play songs from all those albums when we played live
Right.
because
You
the
would
the the way Brendan rearranged those
right.
things for live work.
Yeah.
So I was a
Yeah.
lot more involved
In
in the later 80s in the live work rather than the writing
right.
and the studio work.
Right. You would play
Um, but that
continue.
that worked fine for both me and Brendan, and
Right.
yeah, we were
Yeah.
quite happy with that.
You continue to play live, still tour manager, and you would move more into a PR role.
Yeah, so by the time we got to the 1990 tour, we actually had tour management. There was a separate
Yeah.
professional tour managers out with us. So I to be by that stage I was really quite glad to hand over that and not have to have to deal
Right.
with that, I have to say.
I would think.
um
I would
but
think
yeah, I
so.
was always my sort of background in work outside of music has been in PR, marketing, um uh, journalism, press work. So yeah, so I always sort of fitted into doing that some of that for Dead Can Dance as well, quite
Yeah.
happily.
Yeah. Well, I don't want to skip over any of the DCD albums. The Serpent's Egg from '88. I like Severance, probably my favorite off of there. And then In the Kingdom of the Blind, the One-Eyed are Kings. Uh, another one that's very profound.
You're a big Brendan fan, I can see
Yes,
that.
I was wondering how long it would take you to say that. Yes, I like Lisa's vocals. I mean, I love her vocals. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, amazing.
But it's just the combination of the music and the lyrics for Brendan.
Yeah.
It just it hits you right here. And then Ulysses. Ulysses is another really top track. I love. It's more
No,
of a
Brendan's is an exceptional composer. I mean, he's
yes.
really, it's really fantastic, and
Ulysses
it was an
is
absolute privilege to work with him and
yeah,
learn from that as well. Amazing.
right. Yeah. Ulysses is more of a waltz. I mean, I like the way that the whole feel of that song. Well, so many wild things seem to happen in France. Going back to the earlier, what happened on the Serpent's Egg tour after your roommates had finished a pub crawl? Do you recall that? Where they went swimming.
Oh yes, right. Yeah. Yeah. Yes, there was a night we were in a hotel down in the south of France, and I, for some reason that night, I was normally always up for going out and having a few beers with the lads. But on that particular night, I don't know, I was feeling a bit under the weather or something, and Lisa was after a quiet night as well. So the rest of the band had all gone out on the town somewhere, and Lisa and I had just gone and grabbed a bite to eat somewhere, and then gone back to the hotel and both gone to our rooms and gone to sleep. And then I was woken up because I was in a shared room with some of the other lads, and I was woken up about 1 o'clock in the morning or something by the rumpus as they came in, and they were all soaking wet. And it transpired that in their inebriated state, they'd decided there was a good idea to get some pedalos off the beach, or get a pedalo off the beach and take it out and try and cross the cross the Mediterranean to Africa. But they hadn't realized that at night time the guys with the pedalos take the plugs out the bottom of them, so they'd got about
They didn't
about
get
100
burned.
meters out into 100 yards out into the sea and sunk. Um, and yeah, it wasn't their finest hour.
You said there was like a trail of salt once they were back
Yeah. I think
in
the hotel wasn't particularly pleased about that. There was this wet trail through the hotel. Yeah.
Oh man, the funny things that go on in the hotels with bands, right? Well, what was it that you liked about playing the town and country club so much? What was it that you liked about playing there?
Yeah, the Town and Country is a big old. Well, it's about a 2,000 capacity venue in North London, and there's just something about different venues. You can't really put a finger always on what it is about a venue that creates a good sound, good atmosphere. But there was just something about that venue. It's I think it's an old cinema or something that's been converted, and it just there's nothing exceptional about it, but just we always seem to have a really good sound there, and just the audiences were great there, and yeah, I just have very fond memory. We played there 3 or 4 times, and I just have really fond memories of the shows there. I can't, yeah, I can't. There's nothing I can really pin it down to, but you just get a feel for a venue, and just when you come off stage, a show's been really good, and that it was always great at that venue.
Okay, it always went well. Well, on the after the tour, what had become the rift between Brendan and Lisa? Because they would go on to write material for the next album, but independently, uh, apart from each other. What had happened between the two of them?
Um, I mean, they were, when I first knew them, they were in a romantic relationship together, and that had gradually drifted apart. And probably from around about 1987 or whatever, they weren't in that kind of relationship anymore. Um, they'd always, to some extent, written parts separately from one another. I mean, they'd take things to each other and work on things together, but yeah, they they had quite separate visions of what they wanted from their pieces of music. So it I mean, I love, and obviously a lot of Dead Can Dance fans love the way they melded together the things they brought together, but they they did have their individual take on things. Um, but then geographically, after from the late 80s, Brendan eventually went to live in Ireland, in the area where his mother's family comes from, and Lisa went initially to Barcelona for a while, and then moved back to Australia. So obviously, geographically, they were very far apart, and so were working on things completely in isolation to each other, instead of hearing things drifting through the walls of being in the same apartment together. Um, and yeah, I don't know that made in the long run, made any great difference to the sound of Dead Can Dance or what was being written. But yeah, I mean, just physically, geographically, they were in very different locations.
Yeah, logistically, it was not conducive, working together. Well, you and Brendan were listening to more European medieval and Renaissance music.
Yeah, that sort of came about slightly independently. I discovered some music in that kind of early music sphere, the medieval Baroque stuff, and he did in his own way. And we were listening to some things that were the same, some things that were different. But he started incorporating that into Dead Can Dance's music long sometime before I started using some of the same influences in my own music. So it's very interesting for me to experience as ever how he was doing it, and I learned quite a bit from watching and listening to what he was doing in that regard. So yeah, we'd gone. So Dead Can Dance went from over the over that sort of a 10-year period, I guess, from guitar bass drum band to almost an orchestral concert type band to a medieval folk band to a world music roots, African, Middle Eastern, South American, Latin American influences. So it was, yeah, it was it was an incredible range of different musics and influences that were covered. But as I was saying before, there was always that Dead Can Dance. There was always something elementary Dead Can Dance
Yes, there was that.
that made the link between all those different
Right.
musics.
There was that common thread there. Yes,
Hmm.
exactly, exactly. Well, you had written a few songs and set up your own label, Cornerstone Records. Yeah.
Yeah, that was a very short-lived label. It managed to have
Yeah.
one double A-sided single release, and then because it wasn't commercially successful, that was the end of that.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was great
Yeah.
fun to do.
Yeah.
And probably Takaharu's Leaving is
Yeah.
still the best known of my songs, because I then put it on included on my first solo album as well. So But yeah, it was a great experience to do. Yeah,
Yes,
fantastic.
Takahari's leaving B-side evocation.
Mm.
And you designed the cover. You drew the cover for that one as well.
Yeah, I guess probably to some degree inspired by Brendan doing the cover for Garden of the Arcane Delights. I thought if he can do that, I'm going to have a go. So
You were
yeah,
inspired.
there was a bit
There
of
you.
that in it.
I wanted to ask you about one instrument, the ongklung.
Yeah, so
My my wife is
it's an
Indonesian. Yeah,
Indonesian.
my wife is Indonesian.
Oh right, okay.
That's what piqued my interest
Yeah,
in.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So what kind of instrument is that?
Yeah, so it's like a um it's all made of out of bamboo, and it's they're sort of hanging pieces. It's a bit like having a chime bar or tubular bells, but made out of a small version made out of bamboo.
Okay.
Um, but all I did was I did rather than you can play the individual notes as you would on a set of chime bars, but what I did was I used it to um, just sort of gently sway the thing, rattle the bars of it together, so it made that kind of wind and sort of ethereal sound that just came in. I used it as a sort of background thing on evocation. Yeah,
Okay, on that
but it's a
track. Oh,
beautiful little instrument.
yes, yes. The first time I'd heard of that instrument, yes. Well,
Mm,
my favorite track from Ion, Fortune presents gifts not according to the book. Yeah,
right.
yes. That's uh that's my top pick from that one. Well, did the band not tour the States prior to the Ion tour?
We weren't invited,
Oh,
basically.
okay, okay.
We we didn't know we had no real handle on how whether people knew us in the States, whether our music was getting out in the States. It was very difficult for us to gauge that. So we'd been just touring in Europe. Um, and then the opportunity was given to us to go to do a North American tour in 1990. But even at that stage, the promoters, the American promoters, weren't sure what sort of an audience Dead Can Dance would pull in.
Yeah,
So we were mostly booked into venues, whereas in Europe by that stage we were probably playing venues that were like two and a half thousand capacity. In America and Canada, we were given venues that were about say three or four hundred capacity venues, and yeah, as I say, they weren't sure whether we'd how the ticket sales would go. But as it happened, they sold out. I think we were pretty much sold out for the whole tour quite quickly, and they even added on. There wasn't much scope to do anything else, but the last venue that we played in Los Angeles, they added on one show at the same at the Woodworth Theatre. They added on one more date. But yeah, we at that point we didn't have distribution. We didn't our albums were only available on import in the States, so we didn't have distributors. We didn't have any kind of setup over there. So we just didn't really know. Nobody knew what the how well Dead Can Dance were known.
yeah, yeah,
So it was only by doing that tour that we got the response, found out, and then as a result of that, we got interest from Ryko, and then ultimately signed to or our catalog was put out was then licensed by 4AD through Warner Brothers, and then obviously the it all took off over in the States. But
yeah.
yeah, that was why.
That was why. Okay. Well, the music had been seeping in over here for some time anyway. I mean, I know I wasn't the only fan. I know others had, picked up on it too. I guess college radio had been playing you guys for a while. And so,
Mm,
the music was getting through. Well, you mentioned Ryko. The compilation, A Passage of Time, was released in 91.
yeah.
A favorite off of that is Spirit, off of that album.
Yeah, so there were a couple of new songs done for that album, so it wasn't just purely a rehash of what had gone before. So Spirit was one of those. But yeah, it's a nice track.
Yeah. In 1993's Into the Labyrinth has another Dead Can Dance track I would put in my top 4 or 5. The Carnival Is Over.
Yeah.
Oh, wonderful, wonderful track. And I also like Ariadne and How Fortunate the Man with None. Yeah,
Right.
off of that album. Then came the live Toward the End album, released in '94, American Dreaming. What a track! And that's more of just a traditional, Brendan doing more of just a traditional song,
Yeah, it is. You know, he's full of surprises, Brendan. He suddenly will put something into, after pretty much shunning the guitar for so long, he suddenly, he'd always could obviously he always continued to play guitar, but really hardly used it on, if at all, on any of the albums from Spleen and Ideal onwards.
Right.
And then suddenly, but yeah, he used to play guitar in live shows, and then yeah, picked up his guitar and decided to do that one for that tour. And I love that track. I absolutely love that track.
Yes.
It was a little bit for me personally. It was a little bit annoying, I guess, that they finally got to do their live recording on what was pretty much the first tour that was ever done without me.
Right.
But so just from a personal point of view, it was a bit disappointing to miss out on that. But anyway,
Yeah.
that's life.
that's live. Well, 1996 Spirit Chaser. That's one of only a couple of studio albums that I don't have a copy of, for one reason or another. I guess I didn't follow that album too well, but the tour, the Spirit Chaser tour, is when I saw the band at the Majestic in Dallas, Majestic Theater. That is the tour. So I made up for it, not having the CD, going out and seeing you guys in concert. So
Yeah,
that was
so Spirit Chaser was the album that I got invited. Brendan at the time, in the lead up to that album, Brendan had got into samba music, and he was actually running local classes in the town in the town where he lived in Ireland. He'd put together like a samba group, and he was doing samba classes and getting people in the local community involved in it. And then he decided that when he started work on the Spirit Chaser album, he wanted to get a group of percussionists together and just lay down a load of tracks, multi rhythmic, polyrhythmic tracks, to use as a basis for songwriting for that album. So he phoned me up and said that, and said, "Would you like to be involved?" And of course, I'd been missing it so much, and I
yes.
said, "I'm booking my flight tickets right now."
You don't have to ask twice. Yeah.
And yeah, so it was in 1995. I went over there for it was just for a week, and we had 8 of us. So it was Brendan and Lisa was there, who I hadn't seen for years as well. So it was great to be back with them both again. And Brendan's brother Robert, who's a great friend of mine, and a couple of guys from the Irish band Keeler who'd been working with Brendan, who are fabulous musicians. They're absolutely great. And yeah, we had this. We put together this percussion rhythm section, and we spent a week just jamming and with Brendan directing operations as ever, and laying down tracks, and it was great. And out of that, two two songs off the Spirit Chaser album used sessions that we recorded for that album. But also, if you went to the tour, you must have got the tour program with the CD of Sambatiki.
Yes.
You still got that?
Yeah. Well, my
So
brother.
that was also from one of the rhythm sections that we recorded at in the studio in Ireland, Quivi Studio, in the run up to the Spirit Chaser album. But that's also a love. I love that track, Samba
Yes,
Tiki. I think
yeah,
it's an instrumental, but it's great, and
yes.
it was great fun to record.
Fun to record that one. Well,
Mm.
Brendan would work with you on your first solo album, Pathways and Dawns.
Yeah, so it was while I was over in Ireland doing those sessions in 1995 that we were out having a drink one evening in Brendan's local pub, and he just said to me, "Are you still writing anything?" Because he knew obviously I'd written a few things before, and I said, "Well, yeah, little bits here from here time to time, here and there." And he said, "Well, if you can get together enough stuff for an album, you come over to Quivi and I'll record it for you." I said, "Really? Would you?" And he said, "Yeah." So the next day, I checked with him again and said, "You know, you hadn't been drinking too much Guinness last night and made me this." And he said, "No, no, no, it's straight up." He said, "Serious." So I said, "Okay." So when I go back to London, I went out and bought myself a new computer workstation so I could start um, writing stuff. Yeah, very much influenced by the way he worked before and what I'd seen him do, and started writing songs. And over a period of a year or so, I got together. Yeah, because I was working at the time and had young children, so it was all a little bit, it was difficult to focus on it completely. So it took a while, but over that period, I got some songs, 6 songs, another 6 or 7 songs written, and went back to Quivian a couple of times, and we recorded them. And he was brilliant because he did all the production work on. I mean, he not only recorded those tracks, he did all the production work on it, and also, as he does, jumped in and played, added some additional parts in, which were all absolutely great. So yeah, once again, he was behind me progressing, and I'd never have done that without him, and never have had a solo career if it hadn't been for his support in doing that. So I owe that man quite a lot.
Well, you're his protege. You know. Well, the
Yeah, I'd like to. I don't know whether he'd see it that way, but that would be nice to think so. Yeah.
okay. Well, the album was released on Project in 1999,
Yeah.
and it garnered some good reviews and some radio airplay. Uh,
Yeah, it's some great reviews. One that always sticks with me is at Alternative Press magazine, which was I mean, it's still going today, but it was very big at that time. Their reviewer described it as the album the Beatles might have made if they'd signed to 4AD rather than Columbia. And I thought, wow,
yeah.
that's some statement to make. So
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, it did get well reviewed. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
lovely.
Yeah. My favorite track on there is Nocturne. That's my
Okay.
yeah. You can definitely hear that his influence, Brendan, in that Dead Can Dance.
Yes,
Yes.
and his guitar playing.
Yeah, that's right, right, right. The Springs of Hope is another one, and then Time and a Word. Those are the
Okay.
yeah the three that
Yeah,
I.
I mean, it's always interesting because I have, I I know at least a few people whose favorite track is every different track on that album, and that's lovely. It's not like there's just one track that everybody says, "Oh, that's my favorite."
Yes. Yeah.
Different tracks of it. I got that. It's the same thing that I got from Brendan. Is starting from the rhythm track upwards and making each track have a very different feel to it, and it's something that I've used ever since. And yeah, it does tend to make for a lot of variety in your songwriting, and has that effect that different people really take to
Right.
different songs,
Yeah.
and that's
It,
nice.
it, it helps you reach a broader audience. I think that way
Oh,
too as
totally,
well.
yeah,
Yeah, as well.
absolutely.
2005, Enter the Mysterium album released on City Canyons. Who all worked and played on that release?
Essentially, I pretty much did that all by myself, just through sheer lack of resources to do anything else. I wrote it over a period of about 18 months at home, recorded little bits of it on a 4-track tape machine, took those into into a local studio, had them transferred onto a main system so that we could add in a few other bits and do the production work on it. There were one or two contributions by other people, but essentially I played everything on that album myself. And as far as possible, it was all acoustic instruments,
Yeah.
but I did use some sampled
Yeah.
key sounds generated from keyboards as well. But yeah, it was great fun to do. I really enjoyed it. It's kind of a bit strange because it's not, as an album, it's not as polished as Pathways and Dawns was, because Brendan's production on that and his contributions were fabulous. But with Enter the Mysterium, I just had to know that I could do something all by myself.
Right. Right.
So although I had a engineer and producer I was working with in the studio on it, it basically I determined how that album sounded, and it's me doing
Yeah.
everything.
Well,
So yeah, so
that's
I'm still
oh,
very happy with it.
oh,
I love the songs that I wrote. Still looking back on it now, and yeah,
well, I was
it's
going to say that's got to give you a sense of satisfaction, like you said, to be in control
yeah,
of the
absolutely,
whole
yeah,
product like that. Well, the songs on there had some little more folk leanings
yeah.
because the folk community was attracted to the album. Yeah. So
Yeah, I think that that's an area where I feel very comfortable fitting into, and I've actually got some ideas for things that I'm wanting to work on in the future that are probably even more folk focused
yeah.
than that was. So yeah, I like that, and I like the traditional nature of folk music and some of the instruments.
Yes. Yes.
I've got a very good friend in the UK who's one of the UK's leading hurdy-gurdy players, and
Oh, is
I'm
that right? Yeah.
really trying to work up something where I work with him and bring some of his music into it.
Yeah.
Um, I'd like to do a bit more with, bagpipes and melodeons and two traditional folk instruments, and yeah,
Well,
it's something that really appeals to me.
oh, that would be nice to hear that. Yeah. Well, two tracks I like, my favorites, The True Cross and Another Day. Those are my two picks
Okay.
off of that. Well, mentioning the folk music, you have a track included on the Various Artists collection, John Barleycorn Reborn, Dark Britannica from
Yeah,
2007.
I had a track from Enter the Mysterium, a track called The Scryer and the Showstone,
Right, right,
included on the first of those Dark
right,
Britannica
right.
albums. On the final album, they came to me and
Oh,
said, "We'd
Lamastein.
like you to, we'd like to invite you to contribute again." But
Yeah,
this time they wanted an original track, not something
yes.
that they were licensing from a previous release. So for that one, I wrote a song. They were going to release the album on Lammas Day, which is it's a folk festival in the UK on the 1st of August, which was the traditional date of the harvest being brought in. So they, as I say, they plan to release the album on Lammas Day. So I wrote a song called Lammas Dance, which is based on the traditional folk dancing that used to take place in the villages as they were to celebrate them having brought the harvest in. Um, and yeah, they they were very pleased with it, and they used it. They used it as like the lead promo track
Yeah,
for the album. It's a double. It's a lovely album actually. It's a
yeah.
big double album about I think about uh, at least a dozen or so songs on each album
Yeah, yeah,
each album. So it's quite a big collection.
yeah. That was
Um, yeah,
I was going to say that's the nice of them to do that, and that so many new bands have been discovered through those, releases like that. Folk
yeah,
bands, uh, neo folk, whatever, kind of category you
mm.
want to put them in. But yes, both of those. Uh, I don't know if you're familiar with Bo. Are you familiar with his name is Trevor Midgley? Do you know who Trevor Midgley is? He's I
No,
interviewed him a couple of years ago, but he had a song on one of those on the 2020 collection, The Roses of Iam, and that's
Yeah, that
old,
sounds familiar.
an older track.
Send
Most of
me the link, and I'll
Okay, I will.
remind myself.
Yeah, I will. But it's a track from '69 when he was in the band Bo. Most of the tracks on there are more recent, but I don't know why they included that one on there, but it's a really, really nice folk song.
Mm.
Anyway, but I will do that. I will do that. Still recording today as well. How did you come by Market Square Music?
That's a good question. How did I come by Market Square? I think I think I was introduced to them by somebody else that I've been contacting when we were looking for distribution. But I must be honest, I can't remember exactly how I came across them now.
That's
But
all right.
yeah, they got involved anyway with distribution for the first album with the Peter Ulrich Collaboration. So
Yes,
um, but yeah, there was they worked with us on that one, and then it sort of faded out after that. So
yes. Now, was Trevor Lloyd, was he involved with Market Square or at all? He was big
well,
city.
he
He was
he
city
like
can
he runs City Canyons
city
in New
can.
York, so he
Yeah.
licensed it to Market Square for the UK market.
Okay,
Um,
that's how that happened.
but yeah, that relationship only worked for that one album, and then we moved on to
Yeah,
different avenues after that.
but you,
But
yeah,
yeah, the relationship I with Trevor Lloyd is something that I worked with him for many years. In the end, he was the one who took up my Enter the Mysterium album to release as my solo album. But then when I came to looking at what I was going to do next, he was the one who proposed that we work on something together and bring in one of his other artists.
yeah,
And so we did this song called Hanging Man in
yes,
around about 2008, and with an artist of his called Sarah Wentz singing on the uh, singing the lead vocal on it. And we were all really happy with the outcome of it, so we decided to pursue it. And then Trevor knows loads of artists from the New York scene, and gradually brought all these different people in. And in the end, we had I think we worked with about 50 or 60 different musicians and a whole huge range of different instruments, orchestral, folk instruments, band instruments, whatever. Um, and we we ended up doing the three albums over uh six well, the whole project lasted for we were working on it for about 10 years,
yeah,
but the three albums were released 2013, 2015, and 2019.
yes, yes,
But yeah, it was a great project to work on, very very diverse, very interesting.
yes.
And Trevor's a great guy to work with. He's an absolute driving force. He made me get down, knuckle down, and got a lot more productivity out of me than I would have done under my own steam. So it was good working with Trevor.
Lit a
And we're
fire.
still we're still we're still in touch today.
Still in touch, yes. Well, going back to
Yeah.
Dead Can Dance, the
Mm.
the Anastasis album in 2012, the first album for what seemed like an eternity. That's a fine album. That's probably my second favorite of Dead Can Dance. That's
Yeah, I agree. I absolutely, when it came out, I was blown
yeah,
away by it. I
yeah,
absolutely loved it.
yeah,
I think there's some great songs on there, and it really, I think what sort of came over to me most was how much it seemed like they'd never gone away.
right, right.
It
That's
just came back and seemed to pick up really, really naturally where Brendan and Lisa had left off
yeah,
before.
yeah,
Because they'd had the coming back together again in 2005. There'd been nothing since the Spirit Chaser album in terms of releases. They came back together for the concert tour in 2005, but then went their separate ways again without recording anything. And then so that album in 2012 was 15, 16 years after on
right.
from from the previous album, but
Exactly.
it just seemed seamless
It did. It
to me, and
did.
that was probably what I found most extraordinary about it. And
Yeah.
I absolutely love that
They,
album. I think it's terrific. I mean, I didn't
they,
know, I had nothing to do with it. I wasn't involved at all by that
yeah,
stage, but
it is. They,
yeah, what a
they,
lovely album.
they hadn't
Mm.
lost a step. You're right. You're right. Well, the
Yeah,
going back to the, I wanted just to mention off of the collaboration, uh, the first album, The Painted Caravan, 2013's, again, good reviews and significant radio airplay in the U.S. I like,
yeah.
you mentioned the song before, Hanging Man,
Mm.
top pick. Also, Children of the Rain. Yeah, off of that one. Those
Yeah. Yeah, they did get good radio play on the college circuit. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. What happened when you went to Rough Trade East to see if the Painted Caravan was in stock? And what happened
Yeah,
then?
they had yeah, I was just I was getting really frustrated that the I wasn't seeing the album in front of people in retail stores and stuff. And I went to a shop called Rough Trade East in London, which I thought, if which really specializes in indie music and independent labels and stuff, and they have a very big range. And I thought, it's got to be in their racks. So I went over there and had a look through, and I couldn't find it anywhere. And then I just happened to be, I can't remember how it came about, but I was browsing through other racks, and I found that it suddenly I came across it, but it had been catalogued as you'll have to, the name's gone out of my head, a famous jazz,
Archie Shep.
yeah, Archie Shepp.
Yeah,
They'd categorized it as one of his albums and labeled it up
yeah.
as his album. So I took it up without saying anything. I took it up to the counter and bought it. And sure enough, when they gave me the till receipt, it registered as a sale of his album and
Not
not
yours.
ours.
Yeah, yeah,
And it just sort of summed up the whole. You do so much work to get an album out into the great wide world, and
yeah,
then somebody in
yeah,
somewhere in the distribution system just makes an error like that,
yeah.
and
And it,
you're in the wrong category in the shop. Your album's sold as somebody else's, and
yes,
it's such hard work. It's really just such hard work.
yes, yes,
um but yeah, it was just an example of the frustrations you get when you're trying to get something out there in
yes.
front of people.
Right. As if there aren't enough, things out there going against you. That
Exactly.
to
Yeah.
have something like that happen, it's like,
Mm.
yes, well, everything has to come together. It really does. You can't have anything like that. Well, the second TUPC album,
Mm.
Tempest Fugitives. I like this. It's a variation on Tempest Fugue. Uh,
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, no, Trevor came up with that.
oh,
He was the creator behind that one.
yeah, I like
But
that.
yeah, he got in touch with me and said he's got that was his idea for the title, and I thought, yeah, that's good. I like that.
It
So we
works.
went with that. Um,
Yeah.
And then also, interestingly, on the album cover for that, there's we've used an image of a clock on there, which is actually made. I discovered through a relative of mine who did that kind of ancestry historic research. That one of our ancestors, going back to the 18th century in London, was a clockmaker,
Is that right?
and there exist clocks with our family, Ulrich. It really was a Germanic name then, Ulrich, because he was a German guy who'd come over and settled in London. And yeah, he became quite a prominent clockmaker. And there are these clocks that exist. There's one apparently in the British Museum, and there was one sold at Christie's auction house back in the 70s or something with this Ulrich name on. So this relative, excuse me, relative of mine, D, who'd done all the research, she managed to buy one of his clocks, and sent me an image of it, and so we used that in the cover work of the album, and that went quite nicely with the Tempest Fugitives
Yes,
idea. So
yes. Nice way to bridge the past and the present, doing that
yeah.
too as well. Wow, yeah, full circle kind of thing. Well, I like Don Juan's Lament. Uh, King.
Yeah, that's very much a song that Trevor wrote. I mean, I do my role in we there were some songs that I sort of took the lead in, some songs that he took the lead in, some songs that other of the artists took the lead in. But he would always do all the production on every song and the kind of arrangements or the final arrangements. I would do anything from writing and arranging the whole song to maybe even on some songs just purely playing the percussion on it. But every song on the collaboration project had both me and him involved in it to varying degrees. So yeah, that was the basis of it.
That one,
But we
King
do,
of.
but there's a lot of contributions from other artists who were involved in the project in that as well, which was really nice. So again, it gives it a lot of variety and a lot of depth.
Yeah, King of Fools is another one that I like. Uh,
Sorry, which one?
King of Fools,
Okay, yeah,
King of Fools, and Big Iron Gun.
right.
That one's like a throwback to the old traditional folk type songs, you know.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. And then Icarus, yeah, is another one off of there that I really liked. Yeah, those. Well, let me ask you, what is this is the first time I've heard of this term. What is steampunk? What is that?
Oh, okay. So steampunk is the idea. It's a bit like the sort of fantasy worlds that Jules Verne created. It's the imagination of science that combines the future with the past. So it's spaceships that could go to the moon, but they would be in the form of a Zeppelin airship with a basket underneath and someone in the basket with goggles on and flying in space or whatever. Um, and it's a kind of it's all based around sort of Victorian Edwardian style dress costume. Um, but it's this sort of fantasy mix of past and future. Um, so yeah, there's various
Yeah.
exponents, and there's quite a few people who have written books and things that have a steampunk basis of them. Um, but musically, there isn't really anything that you could nail down and say this this is steampunk music. For me, the closest it comes to steampunk music is those kind of wild and crazy Eastern European orchestras.
Okay.
Um, that to me conjures
Yeah.
up steampunk, perhaps
Well,
closest. But
yeah.
yeah, there's various bands and artists tour there's steampunk shows where people dress up in the Victorian Edwardian costumes and have flying goggles on and come along with weird and wacky creations,
Yeah.
backpacks and things with funnels and tubes and pipes and stuff. And yeah, it's an interesting sort of fantasy arena, and there's various artists, bands, and have that put themselves out to that audience and call them, and say we and focus on playing to the
Yeah.
steampunk audience.
Yes.
So
So, so like a cross pollination of past and future
yeah,
kind of
absolutely.
like that. You know, one artist I think of, Kate Bush. Kate Bush with Cloud Busting. Do you know the song Cloud Busting?
Hmm.
It has a steampunk feel.
Yeah.
Uh, the because she's busting the clouds, and that machine she's using is, like you said, is a throwback to that period. But it's
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, there's nothing you can say that definitely is or that definitely isn't. It's a kind of
Yeah.
it's a conceptual thing, but
Right. Yeah.
yeah, absolutely, that,
Right.
that kind of thing. So we had, or Trevor in particular, had this idea of these sort of journeys that we were trying to create through different areas with the music on those albums. When we got to the Tempest Fugitives album, he was quite keen on kind of aiming it at the steampunk audience and seeing if we could pick up on that. Um, and there's also a lot of people who are into steampunk were previously into gothic punk as well. There's a
Yeah.
definite correlation between the two. Um, so we kind of started putting our feelers into the steampunk community and market, and originally he Trevor wanted to get a live show set up for us, and originally we were going to do one of the big there was an annual at that time an annual steampunk fair held in New Jersey each year, and we were going to play that, but that ultimately fell through. But then off the back it turned out to be a good thing, because we ended up doing a gig at Webster Hall in New York in June 2015 with a 17-piece band, and it was an amazing show to do, but it
Yeah.
was very complex. And if we tried to do it at the steampunk fair, it would have been a disaster, because we'd have had no sound check, no time to set up properly, and it was a good thing that yeah, it must have been fate that the hand of fate involved that didn't come about. But we kept in touch with the guys who ran the steampunk fair, and they were still very supportive of us, and they helped us with publicity for the Webster Hall show. And the Webster Hall show turned out, was great.
Okay.
So yes, and then through doing that, I met up with a duo called Frenchie and the Punk when I was over in the States, who are very big on the steampunk circuit. They do all the steampunk shows. And we became great friends. And did a guest appearance on one of their songs at the Steampunk Festival. And they came and played with us at the Webster Hall show. And then the following year, they came over to the UK and did one of the big steampunk festivals here, and I went along and played with them again there, and then met some of the other people in the steampunk realm. So it was great. It was good contacts, good people, and that's one of the lovely things that can come out of being involved in music and different projects.
Yes. I think it's nice, like you said, that you started the collaboration, because then
Mm.
you're able to work with a lot of different artists, and that kind of thing
Yeah,
too.
and the experience in when we did the show in New York was fantastic, because that was, as I say, we had a 17-piece band, and when I arrived in New York to do the rehearsals for the show, I knew of those people because they'd worked on the recordings for the project before, but I'd never met any of them,
Yeah.
and that's a bit to suddenly walk into a studio where you with 16 other people who you've never met before, and start playing music with them when you know you've got a big show just around the corner is a bit intimidating, I
Uh,
have to say. But
it's
they
it's
were absolutely brilliant. They couldn't have been more welcoming. It was extraordinary to have that many musicians together, and there didn't seem to be any animosity. There was no like little
right,
cliques or frictions going on. They were
right,
just
right,
brilliant people, and we had an absolute ball doing that, the
right.
rehearsals for that and the show
Yeah,
itself,
yeah,
and I
yeah,
love those guys. It
yeah.
was great.
Well,
And
it's almost,
Trevor,
yeah.
I can never thank him enough for he really masterminded all that,
Oh,
and
right.
it was just brilliant. Yeah,
It's
it was
almost
great.
it's almost the collaboration's almost like communal, I mean, you guys
Mm,
are all there together, like you said, to uplift, help each other. There isn't any, that infighting and things like that going on.
yeah.
Uh, Dead Can Dance's have to be a completist here. Their 2018 album Dionysus, that's the other album I don't have a copy of, and I haven't listened to it
Oh,
either. I haven't listened to it.
okay.
Is it what kind of review How would you rate that?
Yeah, it's a very different album. It's not nowhere near so song based as things that have gone before. It's very much an imagining of Greek myth and Greek philosophical ideas that went behind that. Um, I mean, it's still absolutely Dead Can Dance, but it's yeah, as I say, it's not song based in the same way that say Anastasis was. So I it got very well reviewed. I think it was maybe it took some Dead Can Dance long term fans a little bit more time to get into it, but I think as far as I know, it's well loved, and it's another another strand to the Dead Can Dance canon. It's another extension of the amazing breadth of what's been created.
Yeah, yeah. Well, your third album with the collaboration, Final Reflections from
Mm,
2019, and again, really good reviews. Three tracks, my picks off of that. Pirate Jane is one that I like.
right.
Swimming in My Sleep, and the remix of Hanging Man. You did a remix
Mm,
on that one, yeah, yeah. So
right.
there we go. On to your memoir,
Mm.
of which you were gracious enough to send me a copy. I want to thank you for that again. And here it is. I'll hold it up right there. You can get a good look at it. All right. I like the cover. I like the cover there too. Very
Yeah,
evocative.
the publishers did a great job with that. Obviously, it borrows from the the debut Dead Can Dance album.
Yeah.
But I think it's a yeah, they've done a really nice design on the cover, and made a good job of the whole production of the book. I'm very happy with it.
Yes. Very good read, as I said earlier. Being a fan of Dead Can Dance and your contributions as well as your own work, that's all most interesting to me. But I also like the parallel adventures part, with the more personal look at your family life, your life and your family's apart from the music. I like that in this.
Yeah, I think if I may say so, it's important for people to understand that this is not a book just just about Dead Can Dance. It's got a lot of information about Dead Can Dance in it, but it's very much my story. And what I wanted to do was to essentially where it comes from is that I got this amazingly lucky experience to go and play in a band that if I'd never met Brendan and Lisa, I'm sure would have been one of my favorite ever all-time bands. And I just got this amazingly lucky break that I happened to meet them and join the band and play in this band. It was incredible. So it very much comes from that basis. So it tells the story of my experiences in Dead Can Dance, and then it tells what I went on to do after that, and what Dead Can Dance were doing alongside what I was doing. So for the first part of the book, I'm involved with Dead Can Dance. The second part of the book, it's I'm kind of a fan of Dead Can Dance, looking in from the outside. Still, I mean, obviously still in contact with them, but then also doing my own thing, and hopefully it's in people find it interesting, the the different avenues that I went down and things that I experienced, and just some of the shenanigans that go on in the music business, and it's also a homage to things that I love in music as well, and I've tried to put that across. So it's got all that bound up in it. But if it's not, don't just go out and buy it if you just want to store the inside track on Dead Can Dance, because it's not
Yeah,
it it,
yeah,
it
it's
it
not.
involves that, but it's not that.
It's not just that, exactly. And I didn't want to focus totally, completely on Dead Can Dance. So that's why I wanted to talk about you and your work as
Yeah,
well.
thank you, I
And
appreciate that.
in this,
Yeah.
I want to thank you again for your time and for sharing and your journey, not just musical, but your life journey. And Again, all the best to you and keep in touch.
Thank you very much for your interest. I really appreciate that and your time.
You're very welcome and all the best. And I'll keep in touch and you as well.
Okay, Greg.
All right. So bye-bye for now.
Lovely.